Hello.
What's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. Just got back from Riptide.
Nice. How did that go?
Uh, it was a lot of fun outside of the games, but
No, I know tournaments like that.
yeah, and like I don't know, it actually felt it was like the culmination of a lot of tournaments where I feel like I wanted to go to this stuff, you know? It's like it's really fun to
mm-hmm.
go to these majors, but then like I for the major itself, but not necessarily for the games. But
Mm-hmm. No, I
so
love
like
the
I
atmosphere too. Even when I've like quote like quit the game before or whatever, I'll still show up to like majors and just hang out. It's just fun.
yeah, it's so much fun seeing everyone. Um, but yeah, so I think this is like I mean, Slow King played terrible in this set, but I don't think I played particularly well. Recently I felt like, honestly, for the past like 6 months, I felt like I have so much I know I need to work on. I have a lot of it listed out. Prioritizing it is a lot of a problem
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
me. Um, but I think that the simplest thing like that I is really simple, but is just look at them. Like I learned this a couple times now, but I never like I'm really bad about moving on, like knowing that I've actually learned something and moving on from it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so I've learned looking at them halfway a bunch of times now. But aside from that one, I feel like what I really want to work on is like set memory, like game memory, like situation recall. Um, in terms of like uh and like I've done some of the stuff. It's like you want to think about what they're doing out of the corner or what they do after an aerial. Um, but I feel like my set memory is really bad, and after a set, I just have these vague impressions of what happened, and I get really angry because I think it didn't go the way it should have gone, you know? But I have no
Mm-hmm.
like specific memory about what actually like the interactions that actually lost me the game. So I feel like I really want to work on that because it would allow me to adapt better as a player, and it would also like make me tilt less if I like gave my opponent
Mm.
credit where they deserved it.
I see. Um, I don't think that like in set memory is incredibly important. Like you're not going to be able to go through the whole game in your head anyway. Um, I think like the most important things to take away from like mid set, is I think you can have like a couple variables flipped, like for like basically for every matchup you just have like a game plan, and then after each game you just consider like, did I follow the game plan? If you didn't, then be like, okay, I gotta follow the game plan. Remind yourself what the game plan is. And then if you did follow the game plan and you still lost, then be like, okay, why did I lose? But like, you don't need to know like all the specific interactions. And a lot of times, like, your perception of an interaction might be biased anyway. Like, you'll be like, they keep killing me out of this spot. Why do I keep letting them get me in this spot? And it's like, but like, the error in that situation might come in a
Earlier.
previous like 3 seconds earlier when they do a certain movement that like gets you to roll into the corner, which causes this whole thing or something like that. So like, I don't think you can like fully understand what's happening in a set until you watch the VOD. And I got this from Zane, but basically the way to not be salty about a set is like, as soon as you lose, you like walk off stage and you pull up your phone and you watch it immediately. And every time I've done that, I've felt so much better about the set rather than getting super like salty about it. I'll just watch and be like, oh, I messed this up. Could have done this better. Okay. And I think that helps, but I don't think you're ever going to be able to get to a point where you can like recall the whole match because it happens too
Yeah.
fast to like make dense memories of any particular moment. It's kind of like a flowing thing.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I don't want to have like a I'm not meaning like a photographic memory or something of it, but just like it feels like the way I phrase it, I got this after listening to some of your lessons. But it's like I don't play the game. You know, it's your tweets about mindlessly running random neutral options into each
Mm.
other. Like I feel like my like when I'm talking about game memory, I'm also like, and I was trying to say like when like when I've tried to learn this, I try to work on like a specific part of what their habits, like what they do out of the corner, as any character, or if they're a Falco. what do they do after laser? Like what did they just do after laser? Just something like that. Rather than try to remember the whole set. But uh, yeah, I see what you're saying though. It definitely that makes a lot of sense about sitting down afterwards. I
Yeah, because if you're talking about like mid-set adaptation, I would say that like it's almost irrelevant. Like low key, like I think a lot of times it'll be like this super abstract adjustment of like just got to keep it more patient or something like that. Like that's I swear that's like as far as I it goes among like most top players, unless like that's specifically the way they play. Like I think most like player to player like studying, oh, this is when someone rolls or this is how they recover. I think that mostly happens, like 99% of that happens between sets. Um,
okay.
like
And
when
they'll
I'm
just like
playing,
train their
and I feel
unconscious
like
to know.
I'm like maybe a player that people would think that I do that super hard, like I adapt to like their options or whatever. And it's like I'll more so adapt to the rhythm that a person is playing at, where it seems like they're like wait a little bit, attack, wait a little bit, attack, you know. And I'll kind of get a feel for like their rhythm, and maybe I'll adapt to that. But like I or like I'll be like, oh man, okay, those were some really good like drift back to ledge as like Falcon recoveries. You better not let him get away with that next game. Like, but it's really minor, and I don't think it's significant. And I've never talked to any other top player that like significantly adapts during the set. It's all like preset and pre-tournament and stuff like that.
Right. It just requires too much active thinking. Trying to take
It's
that down.
it's just like you're better off trusting your practice than trying to make things up on the fly pretty much ever. And so like trying to go through all this mental processing and like change your play like during a set a lot of times just is going to end up slowing down your reaction times, reducing your confidence in your options, stuff like that. Like a lot of times it's just like you did what you practice this stuff, just let it go, and then like I said, maybe I'll be like, oh, I wasn't patient enough, and like that's about it. But I still, you got to just trust like that what you've practiced is good enough, and not try to be like solving problems during the set unless it's like the same rest hits you 4 times in a game, and then you're like, okay, please don't jump into that spot again or something like that. Very
Yeah.
minor stuff though.
So you want to do the work in advance.
Yes, like 99% of it is done in advance.
Yeah. Okay, but so like like in a set that'd be really bad to do. Like if I'm trying to win the set, I'm trying to do my best, that'd be really bad to do. But is it a skill worth practicing in like a practice session or in unranked? Or would you still say it's just like you should just do like analysis instead?
Yeah, I when I'm playing unranked or practicing, I'm really focused on like my own situations of like I'm trying to create this situation, or when this situation comes up, I'm trying to do this response or something like that. I would say I try to do it even less in friendlies where like somebody does the same fair out of the corner every time with Marth. I specifically try to pretend as if they're not going to, so that I can like get better like general practice.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Um, in terms of, I feel like I have a very bad idea of like the rhythm of my own rhythm and of like a player's rhythm. I feel like my rhythm is like the reaction point rhythm, like oh nothing's happening, kind of thing, where I decide to run at them after that. Or maybe like more of like a modes kind of thing, where I'm dash
Mm-hmm.
dancing, you know, and then I just continue dash dancing. Like I used to play Marth for a while,
Mm-hmm.
or like, I played Marth for 4 years, and then I was Fox for 4 now. But yeah, I still feel like I have a lot of Marth habits for Fox, and like one of my friends, like a Shinobi, he liked to say that I try to treat like Fox's dash dance like Marth's, and then I can like pivot grab people, and it's like it doesn't work like that with Fox. But
Kind of can.
I disagree though. I'm like, no,
No,
dude, you don't
like
understand. If I was just better, I just could.
Fox's dash dance is like crazy broken. Like you can do dash dance to whatever you feel like. Like Like, you can use any move. Dash dance is broken. It lets you position yourself. You just don't have as big of a margin of error on stuff like approaching aerials and stuff like that. So I can understand where they're coming from, but, like, Fox dash dance grab and pivot grab are crazy good, so...
Yeah, and pivot up smash. I felt like it was all really good, but
So you say you have trouble like with, or not trouble, but like the rhythm thing, you have a little trouble recognizing it, maybe.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. Like, if you watch this set through that lens, I also would say that I don't threaten approaching options. Like, it's too much take laser, too much power shield stuff, and not enough. Well, not even take laser, like run at them though. So it's like pretty bad, and he literally kills himself.
All right, let's just start going over it, and we'll talk about stuff as we go through it.
Okay. I guess, sorry, one last thing.
Yeah, no.
Except for Falcon, who I watched your lesson with. I can't remember who it is, but it was really really good for Falcon game plan, and it made it seem really simple. Other than Falcon, I feel like I have very poor character game plans, and I have like I play against a lot of characters in like the same way. Like, I'll try the same options against all of them, and I don't adapt them very well. But yeah, just wanted to throw that one out there too.
So it seems like you're like aware of a lot of your weaknesses, but you were saying earlier that like the prioritization of which thing to work on is a big problem for you, because it sounds like you're like really aware of like, yeah, I'm not good at this, and I could definitely do this. And so I guess I'm curious, like, why don't you have better game plans for the characters if you're super aware that you don't have good game plans?
So I spent a while writing up game plans for these characters. That was like over a year ago at this point. And I think it also comes down to like I think I'm just really bad at purely focusing on implementation and like in set or out of set, just any games. I'm unwilling. I'm very bad at relinquishing my ego, I guess, and like I quickly, if I'm playing a game right, I'm focused on like implementing something incredibly simple, like looking at my opponent. That one goes pretty well because I usually play better for it, but if it's something like when I was trying to practice what they were doing after they landed, or just like a game plan thinking about Falcon, but like Falcon felt really simple because it was like I'm just trying to dash dance, react to their aerials, and like dash like right outside their nair ring.
He is a very simple character.
Yeah, it's like the game plan felt really simple, but then it's like I guess I wasn't doing a very good job like simplifying the game plan down to like a couple like key points like that. There's like a lot of reasons, but I think a big one is that I just don't know how to focus.
Okay, wait. So is your tag Vorporal?
No, they just messed it up.
Okay, I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm talking to Hank right now. I was just sorry. I was really confused for a second.
No, you're good.
Okay, continue what you were saying. My bad.
No worries. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I just think I'm bad at focusing on implementing one specific thing. I try to do too many general things. Like I have like right now I'm outlining like 6 different issues, and there could be a whole lesson about like any of them. And,
so this is like a thing that I like to tell people is like you just want some form of objective improvement, and when you make your goals too abstract, you can't quantify whether you actually got better or not. And then it's way harder to tell if you should keep going in the same direction or a different direction. So you were like, oh, this super basic thing of like watching my opponent more, you know? And it's like, that is not a super basic thing. That is like a super abstract thing that is almost impossible to quantify. Like what were you watching? You know, like what, you got to get better at one thing at a time. Not like one abstract chunk at a time. Like people will be like, yeah, you know, I really want to get better at edge guarding. I'm like, okay, so what have you been doing? And they're like, I just think like, you know, I go in, I'm thinking good edge guards. And it's like, no, you got to be like, when they do this recovery, I am now better at covering that specific recovery. And then because you're better at covering one specific recovery, you know for sure that you have now improved. And that makes it so much easier, like, basically to do little tiny rungs on the ladder rather than try to do, like, big giant steps on the ladder, you know?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So in terms of looking at your opponent, for example, you're reminding me of like stuff where it's like when you grab them and I'm fox up throwing, I need to make sure to move my eyes up and preemptively and like doing that kind of like motion rather than like because I feel like my eyes are probably dragging behind my opponent, right? Because I'm not trying to look, I'm not looking at where they're going. But like even to me, that's like still improvement because previously I'm just staring at my character because of like it's too much solo practice and just being bad. And so like like in my mind, just looking at anywhere close to them was like an improvement. But I guess I should be thinking about it.
Well,
More
like that's
concretely,
a good example of like, okay, you want to like you feel like you're not really following your opponent's DI and tech and stuff off of your up throw well enough. Okay, let's just say that as like an example. Then like you should try to just literally improve at that when you're practicing for like a day or two. Just that. Until you feel like a solid improvement on just that one thing. Because you say you're hard at you're bad at focusing, but I think it's more that you kind of overwhelm yourself. That's the impression that I am getting from the stuff you're saying, where there's like, oh, there's like 5 things that I should be working on that I could, but there's too much, and it's like, no, it's just like a thing about narrowing it down. Like, a lot of people will think that they're lazy because every time they think about doing something, they think of like 20 things they have to get done instead of one thing, you know? So I think it makes it a lot easier to focus. I think also a lot of times people sort of like they like want to rush rather than take things one at a time. Whether like I'll just be like, yes, just make 1,000 small improvements, and you'll be a top player. And people are like, but that takes forever. 1,000, and I did 1 today. I'll never make it, you know. And then it's like, well, yeah, but like 1 a day for 3 years, and you're at 1,000, and you're like a top player, you know. And it's like, but people want to learn like 20 things at once because they don't want to be good in 2 years, 3 years. They want to be good next week, and they want to be good next week. So they got to get good at spacing and edge guarding and combos and all the different matchups and all this. And you know what they end up doing? They end up gaining 0 steps, you know. And so they don't even get closer to the 1,000 because they're trying so hard. They want to do all 1,000 in a week, and they want it to be 5 steps instead of 1,000. So they make each step huge. They're like, oh, I can run a mile in 5 steps if I just take really big steps, and they end up never taking a step because there's no way you can take a step that big, you know?
Yeah, so it happens when you're taking the tiny steps and then you're sliding back. Like, sorry, just ignore that part. If I'm doing something for a day or two, it doesn't feel like I'm going to learn it necessarily. Like, it feels like if I do it for a day or two and then maybe it's just like I am focusing on something too big that I can't learn in a day or two. But like, I guess it feels like hard. Like this, that brings me back to the part where it's like hard to tell when I've actually gotten good enough at something to move on. Because it's like if I'm actively thinking about it for a day or two, right, and I get a lot better at it, but then I don't think about it for the next 2 months as I work on each other thing for a day or two. Do I actually like? How do I tell that I'm retaining that? You know, or like, does that make sense? I don't know.
Sort of. It's kind of like, so forgetting things is also part of the game, and having things sort of overwrite other things or misplace them, and it's part of why getting good at the game is not so simple, I guess, because like like, okay, for instance, the second week in playing Falco, or literally like the second day or something, it was like immediately, like I was horrible at Falco, and I was like, oh, if I do run off double jump down air, but I don't drift back at all, and I do a straight up jump, and then I drift back really late, it covers shortened the ledge. And I was so excited, and I covered shortened the ledge like 50 times, and now I've gotten way, way, way better at Falco, and I still don't do that. And it's like, I really do want to implement it again, but I've just been implementing other things. And so it's like, as long as you put time into it, it will be there. It doesn't necessarily like always express on the surface. You just sort of have to trust that it's okay. It's kind of like if you like go to the gym and you like work out, and like you're not gonna PR every day. You know, some days you're gonna feel like you're kind of going backwards, and that's okay as because you have to trust the process. So I think like you're at a point right now where you don't have a process to trust, and I think that makes everything difficult because you don't have like a if I just do one thing a day, I'll keep getting better, you know? And so, like, I think that's honestly, like, without even looking at the VOD, I think that's probably the number one thing we need to get focused on for you is, like, getting confident in, like, an implementation loop. So I just want to,
Yeah.
I'm just a little bit more curious, like, what do you feel like happens? So, like, let's say you practice, so like let's say there's like a position where you always up throw up smash as Fox or something, and then you realize that in that position you actually want to do up throw regrab. Like how would you determine, like what would you say? So let's say you do it for a couple days. Like what do you think, like what is happening that's making you feel confused on whether it's implemented? Because for me it's kind of like what I'll do is I'll go in and I'll be like, okay, when that spot comes up, you're going to grab instead of up smash. And then I'll do it, and then I accidentally up smash. I'm like, okay, come on, do the grab there. Accidentally up smash again. Then maybe, you know, one time I get the grab, and I'm like, yeah, I learned it. And the next time I do the up smash again, and I'm like, come on. And then, but like, eventually, if you do it like enough times, you know, 10, 20, 50 times, within like a day or two, you sort of just started doing it, like you sort of just do it automatically. And the only way to go backwards there would be to start up smashing there again. So are you saying that, like, in that example, that you kind of just start up smashing again, or what do you mean?
I would say, yeah, in that example, if like 2 months later, after not practicing slight DI on a platform or whatever for a regrab, that I would start up smashing again in like a set situation or something like that. Because like the majority of my practice, I feel like has been the mindless easy practice, right? It's combo practice. I'm not good at setting up situations, but I was pretty good at setting up combos, and like for that kind of thing, that I feel like that would be something I could rectify in a day or two, but it would be something that also goes away after a few months. Like I do have to remind myself every time.
So
like
are
not to
you?
simplify it.
So you mentioned specifically like in like a tournament set. So like when you are learning new things, are you specifically trying to implement them in tournament? Or do you implement
No,
them on your own and hope they come out in tournament?
I implement them on my own, and then in tournament, I just kind of go just try.
Okay, so there's 3 stages to implementing anything, and I don't consider something confirmed to be implemented until those 3 are complete. First one, solo practice. Second one, friendlies. Third is tournament. Anything that I am implementing in friendlies, I will try really hard to land in tournament at like a local. Like this is the purpose of locals. Like a weekly. This is the entire purpose of a weekly. Like if you're going to the weekly and you're just like, I just want to win or whatever, it's fine up to a certain point, but once you kind of get pretty good, you're pretty good, like you kind of get to that point, the weekly should no longer just be like I need to grind at the weekly, I need to win, I just need to play really hot, you know, it's like, no, like the weekly becomes like an implementation session where you're like, there's some amount of pressure and you want to practice doing it under pressure, because the truth is that a lot of times actually implementing things in tournament under pressure is very difficult, and even sometimes I will work on something alone, work on it in friendlies, work on it at a local, and then I go to the major and I don't do it, and that is because I haven't like fully implemented it under that level of pressure. And so that is like a whole difficult second type thing. Like doing everything you practiced at a major is difficult, but you're gonna get the closest to that by learning to practice it at your local and practicing it. A lot of times the stuff that I'm most likely to do at a major is stuff that like, oh, I was in grands at my local and I was under a lot of pressure, but I just reminded myself, don't worry, it's just a local, and I did this thing, and then it gets kind of burned into your brain to like do it. But so like the conscious implementation of stuff needs to happen like in tournament as well as in friendlies and alone. You're never gonna be able to just work on stuff and then show up to tournament and do it. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll work on 2 or 3 things over the course of a week. Literally, like I don't go like super fast. I'm not like every day I'm fixing new problems. It's like every week I'll focus on 2 or 3 things max, and I'll show up to the local and I'll be like, okay, so this week I was practicing this one thing on Falco and this other thing on Falcon, whatever. Sometimes you don't get to play those characters, whatever. But like when they do show up, your game plan going into that set should be kind of like how it is when you're implementing in friendlies of like, this is my chance to implement my thing. And the winning or losing is less relevant than like forcing yourself to implement under pressure in tournament. Like there's fear of losing, but I am making myself do this thing that I am working on. And so every week I just kind of go to my local and I double check that my implementations are working. Like, hey, I told myself to run off the platform Shine here, and I usually F-smash, and then in tournament I'll run off platform Shine, I'll be like, let's go, time to move on to something else. You know, like when it's kind of an automatic reaction in tournament, you can be like, yeah, I've definitely implemented it. And you will go up and down and stuff like that, but you can't really account for your like backsliding. Like you can't account for your brain forgetting. And so I don't try to worry about that too hard. I just try to keep adding and implementing things. Like it's like, you know, the sand keeps flooding back into the hole, and I'm just like, I'll just keep digging, you know, like I'll just keep digging, and I'm pretty sure eventually I'll have like a nice big hole in the sand.
That's fair. Okay. Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. What were you gonna say?
A lot of thoughts, but I don't know. I think funnily enough, the one I implement that best in tournament when I go to a tournament, I'm like, I'm gonna focus on this. Was Falcon.
Mm-hmm.
And like I've spent the last like 3 or 4 sets playing against Riche, just thinking about the edge guards and dash dancing.
Mm-hmm.
But like all the other sets, I'm generally feeling like I don't have as much to work on, and so I think not having those goals is kind of killing my motivation because, like you said, it's hard to track the progress.
Yeah, so I want you, like, remember that feeling that you get, or that you've been getting with, like, the game plan and the Falcon matchup. And just, like, what I do for game plans is a lot of times, like, I think it's the same concept where people want an airtight game plan to solve the entire matchup. And a lot of times I don't think that's the best way to do it. I just start with big fat generalizations of like let's see, what's an example of like
Fox did, don't shine, like don't drill shine them.
Yeah, like all the like yeah, and like let's say like let's see a good example. I'm just trying to think of something that's nice and easy. But basically the idea is that you want to just find something really simple and sort of tell yourself, and I actually think a great way to practice this is with lower tiered characters, like making game plans, because they have less counterplay. And Falcon is kind of similar because he's like pseudo low tier. Like he's like a low tier with great moves, where like he doesn't have many options, but they're just really good, and he's fast. Yeah. But, like, let's say you're making, like, a game plan for, like, Luigi or something, you know? You just make something really simple of, like, like, all I need to do is, you know, forward throw Luigi off and then forward tilt him, and then I do, like, my little shine mash on his up B. You're like, there we go, the matchup's solved. And what you do is you just go against, like, a Luigi player, and you would literally do nothing else but that one thing that you told yourself totally just beats Luigi straight up, you know, even though you know it doesn't. And then when he hits you for stuff and when he beats you for going for that, then you go, okay, what did he hit me for? And now I'm going to add like a caveat. Like, yeah, this strategy is great against Luigi. But if he goes to the side platform, you know, then maybe I want to dash away and reset with like some lasers or something like that. And so you build your game plan one step at a time from like, I think this will beat the character. And the character's like, no, because I can do A beats this character, or this beats this character, and the character's like, no, because I can do this counterplay. And you're like, okay, so I do A, unless you do your counterplay, and then I'll do B. And you kind of build it like a tree branch type structure, rather than like sitting down and being like, I need to write out a game plan for Falco. And it's like, dude, that would just be like 100 pages, and it wouldn't be like that relevant.
Yeah, that's pretty much what, like when I told you I made game plans, that's pretty much what happened.
Exactly.
That's why I haven't implemented them.
Exactly. So you gotta just focus on keeping things really simple and breaking things down really hard into like specifics. And a lot of times, I think that'll just help,
because things are at odds though. Like, well, if you break it down to the, like, I see what you're saying, but like, right, if you break it down to the specifics, then you're getting back to the 100 pages part. But you're talking about like building it up slowly to that point.
I see. Yeah, I misspoke a little bit. There's two separate things I'm talking about. For building game plans, you simplify by keeping the plan simple and adapting it. And that's like essentially doing one thing at a time. Like, here's my best idea against the character. They beat it. Here's my slightly adapted idea against the character. They beat that. Here's one more adaptation against the character. So it's still adding on things one at a time. And that's just, like, game plans are pretty abstract. Like, to keep game plans from getting overwhelming, you need to be kind of abstract and then not really worry about it too much outside of that. But then to, like, directly improve, a lot of times it's based on specific situations. So like I said, like, you have this game plan, oh, I'm gonna kill Fox by forward throwing him and shining him, but then like he does double jump down air, so you're like, yeah, my super simple game plan was to grab him, forward throw, and then hit him. But now I zoom in on this specific situation, I implement a solution to Fox double jump down airing me, and now I have like a slightly improved game plan.
Okay, yeah.
And I understand it's not, like, the way I'm saying it is not 100% like you could put it in a textbook and people would be like, that is the perfect way to describe it. But I'm just trying to basically describe that you need to keep things simple. And the simpler you keep it, and you need things simple and then easy to, like, gauge. Like, remember, something that I tell people a lot, and this isn't entirely relevant to this, but it's a little bit, is just that, like, so I always tell people, always stick to your game plan. And because if you go into a game and you deviate from your game plan and you try to make all these dynamic decisions, then, like, you could just, like, when I'm analyzing your match or when you're analyzing your match, all you can really do is be like, should have followed your game plan. But when you follow your game plan and you lose, the game plan is just flawed. You make an implementation on a counterplay they did, and then you get better at it, and then, it's just trying to create structures for objective improvement and keeping those structures simple so that you just don't want your brain to do that overheat thing. Because when your brain does the overheat thing where you're like, reaching in every direction at once, and then you're like, whatever, I'll just nair. Like, and like that is the enemy here, and I think that is like your main enemy that you're trying to avoid. So anything like basically the whole note writing thing, I want you to write like one sentence at a time if you're writing notes, or focus on one thing at a time and just literally focus on implementing that. It's kind of like the Falcon thing. You implemented a couple things and then you body Falcon. Some of the more complicated characters, you implement a couple things and you only do a little bit better. But as long as you just make sure to keep breaking it down, you'll keep finding improvement. And the more experience you get with like structured improvement and like knowing for sure that the ladder is being climbed and not overwhelming yourself, you'll get more confident in it. And you'll just be like, oh yeah, I just implement a couple things a week and I go test them out at the local and then I get better. And that's like what we're aiming for.
Yeah, no, more than anything, that structured improvement is like what I want out of Melee.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, and you're saying in your model of it is doing it through game plans because that allows you to break it down into digestible.
Yeah, game plans and just keeping things very like objective, where it's like every time they come back invincible, I die. And so you're like, okay, so I am going to now do this while they are invincible, and then you implement that, you're no longer dying while they're invincible, you've made an improvement. And it doesn't really matter if that takes a little time. Like, maybe when you first start doing this, like you said, it's really hard for you to know whether it's implemented for sure or not. So maybe you have to work on, like, one little thing for, like, a week or two until you're really sure of it, because it's more about you getting confident with this process rather than, like, starting off sprinting super hard. It's more that I want you to get comfortable with the process of breaking down specific things that you can then improve on and implement. Solo practice friendlies tournament, get that whole chain implemented, feel confident that it is now implemented, and move on. It doesn't matter if that takes you a day or a month. We need to get that cycle moving, and you can always speed it up as you get better at it.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, do you want to keep talking about stuff? Do you want to go over the VOD? Like, what do you want to do?
We can go over the VOD. I'm not sure how much there is to get out of it. He pretty much feel like he killed himself in every possible situation.
I see.
And then, like, yeah, that's 10 seconds in. I mean, another great thing about my gameplay is I feel like I'm not very good at undershooting, overshooting. As a Mark player, I mindlessly like grabbing people's landings, and it would work against their dashback, you know. But when I run and place it in there, and the Falco backflip, or anyone, you know, just stomps me or whatever, it doesn't work. It never works at all. So that's like another like character agnostic thing that I like. That's what I feel like. There's problems that are like across characters, right? And I don't. Do I work like if it's a game like?
Yeah. Okay. So
like overshoot, undershoot.
So
yeah,
here,
like,
yeah. That's a good question. So basically, and it's interesting because like while I'm listening to you talk, I can see you doing the thing where you like, all right, how do I improve at this? And you're like, well, it's kind of messing up, and it's kind of across all these matchups, and it's kind of a lot of situations, and there's really a lot going on. I'm really not. And it's like, you know, like it kind of like snowballs in terms of like you just keep adding on info until you overwhelm yourself with what you're doing, and it's like, let's get a little bit more specific with that. So you're bad at undershoot, overshoot. So pick one first. Let's say undershoot. Pick a matchup that you feel like undershoot is useful for. Let's say Marth. Let's say you want to practice doing undershoot nair and getting them to whiff the grab, assuming that they were going to, dash dance grab your full drift aerial. So now you went from I'm bad at doing undershoot, overshoot to I want to practice baiting Marth's dash back grab using undershoot nair. And then you can get in matches with a bunch of Marths on unranked, practice the undershoot nair a bunch, get them to bait it, get them to do the grab in the wrong spot, and then punish it. And like I said, the only thing that's stopping you from doing that is the feeling that it's too slow and there are too many things. And so I just tell people to focus on the one thing at a time, the slow grind, but the truth is that once you get really good at that loop, things will sort of auto-solve. Like, let's say you get really good at undershot nair against Marth grab, and then you're playing against another dash dance character, let's say
another fox,
Falcon, a fox, maybe even Peach in certain spots where she's trying to like dash back down smash you or something, you know? And you'll just kind of do it sometimes subconsciously because you're like, your brain's like, man, I've been getting rewarded a lot for this undershot nair against Marth. And so while you're playing, you'll just happen to kind of do it. And sometimes your brain will be like, oh, hey, that's that undershot that works against this character, and it works here too. And you can actually kind of get like 5 things implemented for free out of nowhere. Kind of like, you know, like, what are those things called? Like Candy Crush, you know, sometimes you get like big combos where things like break and then the next thing breaks and the next thing breaks. That can happen, but you just need to not rely on it. When it happens, it's like a big, like, happy random occasion of like, oh, hey, like, I didn't think that, you know, practicing pillars against Marth on FD would make me so much better at pillaring Sheik on FD. You know, like sometimes you get little accidental bonuses, and you just got to be happy with those. But don't let the fact that things are matchup agnostic, like, change your...
from working on it in one matchup?
Yeah, like make you feel like it's something abstract that you have to work on in every matchup all at once. Just keep breaking it down. Specific of like one little block that you can easily implement and it isn't overwhelming in any way. And like as you stack those, you will get little freebies and slides and bonuses and stuff like that. But you've got to just not think about, because I think it's sort of like I said, it's that big step thing. And when things are like, oh, I need undershoot overshoot, that's a huge step. But then when I tell you to break it down, just undershoot nair against Marth dash dance grab, that almost feels like, to a lot of people, that would feel like you're taking like an inch step. That's not even like a normal step. That's like an inch. And you're like, well, instead of 1,000 steps, now it's like 50,000 because I'm taking the smallest step imaginable. And the key is to just not worry about that. Because like you will get these sort of bonuses along the way. You just don't think about the hundreds and the thousands of things to implement. Just worry about walking forward. Just worry about, as long as you are moving forward, good things are happening. And let's say you do this for a year and you keep adding on all these little things and you keep improving, but it's not fast enough, you know, and you're kind of falling behind despite constant objective improvement. Then you can work on like, okay, clearly other top players or people of my level are implementing things faster than me. Why is it kind of slow? But you need to get good at this process first. And it's like a process that it's like a little tricky because it's hard to accept the like, if I go at this rate, it'll take me 10 years, you know? And it's like the improvement's not linear, but you have to like improvement from the outside isn't linear, but the process is linear. So like it's just like every day you do the grind and you do your little implementation and you just move on and you don't worry about the fact that you implemented 3 things out of 10,000 today. You just don't worry about that because you'll do 3 things and then the next week you do 3 things and then the next week you do 3 more things and you look up and you realize that through those 9 things or 12 things, I don't remember how many I said, you actually ended up at like 200 things that your brain sort of implemented while you slept because you focused on learning these new things. So just don't worry about the total number. Focus on being able to break it down so that you can solve one thing.
Okay, so then I know you say you have a lot of things, so like that you're working on it each time. If I'm playing unranked and I don't get to control the matchup, I know the solution is to find consistent practice partners, and I wouldn't have to ask this question. But if it's okay.
I'm an unranked playing loser also. I just sit there playing unranked instead of actually getting good practice, so I feel you.
Yeah, so bad practicer here. If I'm practicing against random matchups, and like I was playing a little bit earlier, I ran to like 5 Sheiks in a row, and I was like, I've never run into this many Sheiks in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking for a Falco so I could like compare the gameplay of me looking at them to this gameplay, because I don't really think I was. And I couldn't find a Falco. So it's like if I wanted to work on one thing against Falco, like I wanted to work on just dashing at them every time after I get lasered, because I don't do that enough or something. And I can't run into Falco for the day. Should I just have like one thing for every character, or should I just like take that fade back, like, you know, like how do I bring that like one thing into like the fucking mess of unranked?
Yeah. Okay. So I can tell you the way I do it. I just quit out on everyone who doesn't play the character I want to play against. And if you don't want to be rude, you can do something like Kalindi does, where you just change your username temporarily to like looking for Falco or like only plays Falcos or something like that, you know? And like it just makes it a little bit easier, and it's like, yeah, ideally you wouldn't have to do this. And like let's say it's one of those times where like you go on looking for Falco and you run into 5 Sheiks in a row and you're like, okay, is there something that I could be doing that would just like, is there something I can implement against Sheik today? And if your brain is like, we have been we have been wanting to work on that one edge guard on Sheik or something, you can be like, fine, we'll work on it, But 99% of the time, honestly, when I'm looking for Falco and I keep getting Sheik and I quit out on all of them, and you start getting the same people over and over, where there's like clearly no Falcos online for whatever reason, like there's nobody of the character you want, I will just literally quit out on unranked and be like, fine, I'll solo practice it and I'll make a replay, and I'm like, it's not as good as unranked practice, but it's something. Like, and if I don't feel like solo practicing, then I'll literally come back to unranked later. Like, I'm not gonna spend practice time on a character or a situation that I don't want to practice against. Like, that just doesn't make sense, to be like, well, I tried to practice versus Falco, but I couldn't find any, so I played Sheik for 5 hours, and I didn't have anything to implement against Sheik, so I just sort of wasted 5 hours. And it's like, why?
Yeah.
So I just think be a little bit more, like, choosy and be like, okay, like, I really want to practice this one thing against this one character. If I can't find that character, I'm just not going to play, or I'm going to solo practice, or, I'll hit somebody up, or ping a Discord or something. But like, you gotta be, and if you, like I said, sometimes I'll be like, I'm working on Falco and Sheik, and this one thing in Falco and this one thing in Sheik, and then I'll get lucky and find one or the other. But sometimes sometimes I'll be like, oh, I'm in the Marth zone, I only want to fight Marth, and it's like, if you are not a Marth player, I will not play you during that time. Like, that's just how it is.
Okay. Yeah, because I was about to go down that rabbit hole where I just have like one thing for every character.
No, anytime your brain starts stretching, like anytime you start doing that like thing, and I just know this feeling so well from like programming, like making the reason I'm good at this whole process is low-key just from making my video game, because there's literally like tens of thousands of things you have to implement to finish this big game that I want to make, and and you just have to show up and grind and get a couple things done a day and just trust the process that it'll be done eventually,
Yeah. I guess, so then there's 50,000 things to do. Let's say they all take the same amount of time. Some of them are still a lot more valuable to my gameplay immediately than others.
Yes.
How do I prioritize that? Like, in this set,
what happens the most often and what affects the game the most? Those are the criteria I used. Like, sometimes I will literally lose 3 stocks a game to a certain rest setup or a knee or something like that. Then it's clearly time to develop counterplay to the thing that keeps killing me. Or I keep getting the same combo and they do a certain DI and I can't follow up. And I feel like every single stock I should be killing them, but I'm not because they do this DI. Then that's the next thing I'm going to be fixing.
Okay. I think I don't have very good recognition of that. Like, I always say, like, and I've done plenty of lessons, and I'm like, I want to focus on like the pivotal moments, like the 3 stocks that I gave up.
Yeah.
And, like, those moments, and it just, like, I don't know, it just doesn't pan out the same way. I don't know. I feel like that would come back to like recognizing those situations.
Well, I mean,
like,
basically, you should see why, because like nothing matters in this game except for stocks, right? So like, you should look at why you are losing stocks and why you are taking stocks, and why you are losing stocks and why you're not taking stocks. You can also look at why you're taking stocks too, but it's like, so like I might literally, okay, let's say I go in this game and I'm like, okay, I want to find out how the stocks happen. I review so many VODs like this, and I'm a big proponent of like reviewing the same VODs multiple times but with different like lenses on. And not like in a row, just like over time. So I'll be like, okay, and I've done this before. I'm like, okay, how do people die? Okay, he SDs, and then, wow, I died at really high %, so he didn't really combo me super hard. How did I die? Okay, edgeguard at super high %, whatever. Clearly I didn't get bodied that round, And then I'll be like, okay, next stock. Wow, the stock goes on for a while, and I didn't take his stock. Or, the Falco didn't take your stock. And so I'm like, okay, I survived for quite a while there. And how did you die? You died off like the same thing. at mad high percent, and so you're like, huh, okay. And then
Yeah, I mean that specific mindless like tech roll in situation happened. You know, when you DI the down air and the roll in. That situation
in which
happened
spot? Like how
right
you
where
died?
like the combo into the F smash off stage. That
Oh,
right
that?
there,
Yeah, but
that's
that.
so common.
No, you were already pretty dead. Falco has reaction tech chases in the corner there. Like, he can kill you off of whatever.
Okay.
Like, don't like. I just see this isn't something I would worry about because I'm at mad high percent. Like, I didn't get gimped, you know. Like, I got comboed to like 120 and I got sent off. Like, that doesn't seem like it's the problem here. And then I'm like, okay, so I finally kill him, and it's like, man, it took a really long... How did I kill him? It's like, well, I got this really kind of unoptimal, like, high percent. I killed at 150. You're like, okay. And then you die again off of, like, pretty high percent edge guard. And then how does he die? He dies at, like, 130, okay, off of an up smash. And then you died a pretty high percent again off of this edge guard. So you died all 4 times on the right side of the stage, but that's kind of irrelevant. So let's say I'm watching this, right? And I would have gotten all the info that I needed out of just that, where I'd be like, okay, so I'm only dying at like 130, 140. Like, I'm dying at really high percents. So it's clearly not an issue of me, like, getting gimped, right? It could be an issue in neutral game, but I'm also noticing that, like, Falco's stocks, he never dies below 100 and something. Like, this whole game, Falco's not dying. I mean, outside of the SD, Falco dies at 151, and then Falco dies at 130, and then that's it, outside of the SD. And so you're like, and so I would be like, huh, okay, maybe I'm not getting, like, the lower percent kills on Falco, because I feel like a lot of times, you know, if Falco lives to 150 every stock, that's more on you for, like, edge guarding and punishing than anything else. So then maybe that would be, like, the thing I look at and I say, okay, I feel like the combos on Falco are not as strong, or, like, maybe I'm comboing Falco but I'm not killing Falco. So I'm like, okay, let's look and see, like, is there an opportunity that I missed to kill Falco? And if there's not an opportunity that I missed to kill Falco, I'm probably not, like, setting up for kills very well.
You're right.
So I look at this, and I'm like, okay, we haven't really had a chance to kill Falco yet, and we really haven't gotten too much. Okay, so here's a chance to kill Falco. What happens? Oh, messed up. Okay, that's kind of like a one-off. So I would just kind of ignore that. But I did notice that you do this low shine stall every time, and it doesn't seem to have, like, great results. So maybe I would look into that and be like, huh, okay, so a lot of times we get here, and Falco does this, and I grab ledge. Like, maybe I'm shine stalling and back airing too late so that I don't get, like, you know, back air into back air or back air shine here or something like that. And I would start looking at that. Let's see, how does... And then, like, yeah, you keep hitting him, but he's not dying. And so a lot of it looks to me like you're not setting up for, like, okay, let me look at, like, let me just grab, let's see, Falco, and, you know, Leffen's not perfect or anything like that. Let's just look at, there's this BBB versus, like, Leffen set, and I'm just gonna, like, do the same thing where I go through, and I just want to see, like, when does he die. Okay, so this is, like, a pretty high percent kill. Oh, wait, how'd he die here? Aha. So Leffen does this shine stall. So he goes off a little early here and gets this. Falco dies at 69%. Okay, so maybe I need to do more, you know, like, edge guards that kill kind of early. How about this one? This one's Falco dies from a back air here. Hey, at least it's better than an up smash at, you know, 100 something. And then, okay, how does Falco die here? Another fairly high percent thing, I guess. So, honestly, if I looked at that, I'd say it feels like Leffen's not really hitting him as hard as I would want him to anyway. And so maybe that would be, like, a flaw in, like, what Leffen does. I'm looking more for the sets or the stocks where he... Okay, so there's this. And then, okay, so he's gotten a couple kills off of the high back air. Let's see, what else? Okay, pretty high percent kill here. Killing off of back airs or nairs like 100. But a lot of times, like, in your game, you weren't even killing at that low percent, you know? And sometimes it's not super obvious, like, what exactly the issue is. Because I'm looking at here and I'm like, okay, a lot of these situations, Leffen is not, like, super killing super early in a way that, you know, you weren't. And these are where the situations become difficult because you're like, okay, so maybe I'm not building damage on Falco in a way that like leads to these kills or something like that. And so I'm like, okay, maybe I need more info. So then I would go to the next game, you know, and I'm like, okay, oh, is this the second game? No, it's the first game still. Okay, so I go to the second game and I'm like, okay, so what am I doing that's not killing Falco? Because Leffen isn't getting early kills every time, but he's getting them sometimes. Even in that match where I don't feel like it was perfect. So I would maybe be looking and like, oh, man, like how... There's another up smash kill. So you're never really getting an edge guard kill. Oh, here's one.
I think he killed himself.
Oh.
You know, he legit killed himself so many times this set.
Okay, so you're building Falco to 100. And so, okay, so let's say, for the sake of example, let's say, you know, Falco's just unedge guardable, which in some ways he might be. So let's say you're like, okay, maybe I do need to kill at 100 for, like, where I'm at right now. You know, the thing is, like, I'm not always looking for, like, objective facts in terms of, like, my reasoning. I want objective facts in terms of what I'm improving on. But when I'm sort of looking at games and trying to get a sense of what to improve on, I'm not always worried about, like, perfect. I'm more just worried about, like, better. So I'm like, huh, okay, maybe Leffen is killing at 100 kind of like me, but maybe it's taking me too many neutral openings to get Falco to 100, or maybe I'm getting reversaled out of it. And so sometimes it takes a little bit to like look at the VOD to figure it out. I'm like, all right, let's see. So you get a decent combo here. Okay, definitely doesn't look like aha. So here's an example of like, okay, clearly it doesn't take too many hits to get Falco to high percent, and you know, you haven't really hit any edge guards, so maybe that's an issue. But then also, you know, you hit pretty hard, but you're now getting reversal here, and so you're like, so maybe I would see that and be like, oh, like maybe he's getting reversaled a lot, and maybe that's what the issue is instead of not killing early.
Yeah, I would say also I just off of grabs purely, like if I'm at the edge and I grab you, I'm gonna try to up throw, not back throw. Like I try to take the guaranteed damage.
Yeah, against Falco, I think it's really a toss-up which one is better. Against Fox, obviously, throw him off stage, but against Falco, it's a little bit more complicated, I feel like. It's like, how did you get opened up here? Okay, so let's say we've gone through, and maybe it doesn't feel like the offense is the thing too much. Like, because you're kind of hitting decently hard, or... Because that's the thing, is I feel like a lot of this stuff is... You're at a stage where you're doing everything, like, pretty well. But then... Okay, so you missed this.
I was thinking, like, like, if I was watching this by myself and I saw him like that at 100 all the time, and I was thinking those things, which I may not have, I would usually think, I need to go back and practice, like, my 2 pieces at 100.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what I would be thinking, and I would just go into combo mode, I'd mindlessly practice a bunch of 2 pieces, and then I might be a little better for a little bit. But it wouldn't be, like, a overarching thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So... Continuing with that mindset, like, my goal is always to find something that, like, repeats as much as possible. And I got a little confused because I was skipping back and forth between the Leffen things. So I'm trying to see, like, what are you getting killed out of this game? Like, I'm just going to skip back really quick. What killed you here? So you get killed out of pretty bad recovery here. Okay, and then... What kills you? Oh, wait, what happened there? Okay, kind of a bad recovery again. But what started this? Aha! You get kind of like reversaled out of the corner, you know.
Edge.
So now I've seen a couple reversals out of advantage in the corner. So that is a bit of a point that I would be looking at. Okay. Okay, I'm going to watch through it a little bit closer instead of skipping quite as much. Okay, looks like you can hit that. Hit this. Okay. It's interesting. I feel like the way you're. Okay, so. I actually think that the way you're playing is a little bit like not game plan enough, and I think that is part of what makes it hard to deduce like repeated situations from it. Because I wanted to see what was happening in terms of repeated stuff, and almost every situation is like a completely dynamic new situation that is like just popping up out of nowhere. And I would say that like that is almost what I notice more than anything, is that it feels non-repetitive. And I know that's a little bit different from what I was saying where you want to find the repetitions, but I'm almost finding the repetition of like there not being a repetition.
Is that sounds more enjoyable, but it sounds a lot harder to improve on.
What were you gonna say?
No, that's about it. Just that idea. Like I like the I feel like maybe I'm bad at implementing those game plans because that structure is not as like it feels more for. I don't know. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense. I don't have a game plan, so I'm not trying to gimp them all the time. Like I did a double shine gimp at the beginning of the game. It went great. That's the only time I went through that the entire set, and it's like I don't know. I see what you're saying, though.
So. And it took a second after watching. It really does feel like you're just playing like mad intuitively, though, and I think that is also it. Like basically, it perfectly ties in with your improvement issues. That like your gameplay does the same thing, where you think about like a million options until it becomes sort of unclear what you're even really thinking about.
Yeah.
And I think that like, despite me, I was trying to go in a little bit of different direction, going over the Leffenvaz, but I should have really realized ahead of time that would probably be the same issue with your Foxes, that like you're not organizing enough to allow for structured like analysis. Even like I am just watching these games, it's really difficult to like pick out anything in particular you're doing wrong or right. I mean, you're dashing out a laser is pretty good, but it just looks like you're not trying to. Like I said, a lot of times with the game plan stuff, it comes down to like trying to force specific things to happen, and then a lot of times you're like more nuance will come out of your opponent developing counterplay to those things. But I feel like you're just sort of running around and trying to use your intuition to get hits in, which, to be fair, is kind of how you should play in tournament. Like, you should mostly maximize your intuitive abilities, but you want to have, like, the layered game plan for your subconscious to, like, use. Because if you don't have a game plan, you're just like, here we go. Every neutral interaction is literally a completely different thing. And so you end up with, like, the best analysis I can do is to bring up, like, hyper-specific points to the point where, like, if you implemented it, you wouldn't, like, it's basically like doing like the one step, like turning it from like 1,000 steps to 50,000 steps by taking a super tiny step, except it's like not a structured step. So like it could do something like the thing you were saying with like the teching away here. It's like, let's say you get really good at teching in place instead. It's more of just a sidestep because you were kind of dead anyway, you know? So you can kind of like accidentally, if you don't have a game plan, be even if you're focused on implementing specifics, you're implementing irrelevant specifics because maybe the reason it repeated over and over was just by chance because you're just kind of doing whatever. So like introducing more order, I think, into the way you play. And so like yeah, like for instance, like this, okay, you did the shine and the double jump here, and it's like, that's great, but it has come up one time the entire set. You know, like the ideal set that you would like to have is you play the exact same stock 4 times and 4 stock them. That would be great if you could do that. And you can almost do that to low tiers. But that should be kind of your goal rather than just like this hyper dynamic style. The hyper dynamic style is like, it feels good to play. You can, a lot of times you can kind of punch up because like better players are looking for your game plan and there isn't one, and so you'll just like and just kind of like freak out and beat them up. Yeah. And whereas like if you play according to a game plan, punching up gets a lot harder because their game plan is better than yours and you're following your game plan, so you'll just lose. So it's there's trade-offs with the approaches, but I think it's really important to focus on the improvement process and style to play rather than like the performance process, you know?
Yeah. I was gonna say, is there like a balance where you can turn off that, like you rely entirely on your subconscious for that game plan, right? Because it needs to grasp onto something, but you still go into that.
Yeah, no, that is the ideal way to perform in tournament, is like your game plan gets automatically executed by your subconscious. That is like what you're sort of trying to head towards. But for right now, you don't have the game plan process really built as heavily, and basically when you play in tournament, your brain gets overridden with your habits of just playing like kind of crazy and disorganized. And so like I think it's more important for you to go in like a direction of like increased game plans and stuff, even if it takes away from a little bit of like your intuitive play. Because like I would just love so much to see you going for the same 3 things over and over, and then when they fail, I can easily talk about like, see, 3 times you went for drill grab and he SDI'd out, and like, why is that? You know, and we can sort of talk about those things more. Or it's like every time you get put on disadvantage, you do the same double jump, then it's nice and easy because like you're like, well, I do this double jump because I believe this double jump is the best option. And then it's very easy to say, oh, okay, instead of this double jump, do this here instead. Whereas like every time you did any sort of movement, this whole set had nothing to do with like any previous movement outside of like a few tropes in like neutral with your dash dancing on the lasers. It just feels like, okay, like what was the plan here? And you're like, well, the plan here was that like I got this weak back here on the platform, and then I drop through shine, double jump, and then I greedy on the tech chase, and then I do dash dance up smash, and then I shield the laser, roll in, double shine, double jump out, and it's like, bro, I can't tell you anything. Like I can't say anything about that because it's like kind of nonsense, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like you need to make your play non-nonsense as much as possible to create an environment where the structured improvements can build on something. Because like I said, that's probably part of the reason why you're having so much trouble with like the structured improvement, is because like hanging on to the structured improvement. Because when you add on an implementation, you're not like welding a piece onto your steel game plan. You're just like implementing a thing temporarily in your intuitive model of throwing out stuff.
And throwing a bolt onto the pile.
Yeah, and so it's not going to stick because you're just throwing it onto a pile instead of like attaching it onto a plan. And so I think that probably contributes a lot to the feeling that the stuff doesn't stick, you know?
Yeah, for sure. pile's pretty big though. But yeah,
Yeah, the thing is,
I,
it's like you, you can start and just start at zero and place things and start structured from the beginning, and that's all good and well. And a player like you're pretty good already. You have a big pile. Like, it's easier for you to organize that pile than it is for someone to like build, like, get a lot of things in their pile. So you have a lot of stuff, you just have to organize it out of a pile, put everything in nice little boxes and figure it out a little bit better, even if you feel like it makes you a little bit less tricky for whatever, something like that. And so, like, don't feel like you having a big pile of disorganized stuff is a disadvantage. Like, you have a lot of stuff, that's already an advantage, you just need to organize it.
yeah, I'll say that like when, and I think the answer comes down to coming up with the line of my game plan outside of playing. But when I play and I'm trying to force the same situation, it feels like I just I just go back strictly to dash dancing, and like that is like my entire thing. Like I'm not trying to like waveland bait or undershoot aerials or like go on some platforms just with some movement. Like my movement turns exclusively into like I'm gonna dash dance until I think the situation comes up, but I don't understand like what I just did and how that forces the reaction from the opponent. If
Mm-hmm.
so, like setting up that like concrete like I did this and they did this part. That I feel like I struggle with like the cause and effect of like what I just did and how my opponent reacted to that.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think that's okay. So we're definitely overtime already.
Yeah,
I'm not worrying about it. That's fine. I just like I'll just sort of answer this question and then we'll kind of like wrap up or whatever. Um, that's always gonna be an issue. Like, that is something that is endlessly frustrating in fighting games in general. Is you like say a very coherent sentence in neutral and they just don't listen and press a button. And
yeah,
basically, if someone is not communicating well, they're just not going to have as high quality of gameplay. And so you can just sort of play under the assumption that, like, you're both experiencing like a similar thing, and when you go in, you know you're attacking, or you're kind of like threatening, and they know you're threatening, and that's just sort of like assumptions that get made at like a high level. If you're trying to play neutral and it seems like someone is just not listening and doing their own thing, then a lot of times you can just like hit like whiff punish them because they're not really paying attention to like what you're doing in neutral. You can just dash dance for 5 seconds and they'll throw something out because they're not really paying attention or something like that. You'll
yeah.
never
I feel like that's what happens to me though. Is like I go into that mode and then now I'm just dash dancing and they're like, dude, what just happened? Like, and then they run up and like overshoot and I'm like, darn, I should have reacted to it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when I try to like force that like structured game plan, I turn into the person who's no longer paying attention to what's happening. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah. Okay. So
sorry, I know. I'm trying
no,
to
we'll
wrap
wrap
up.
it up right now. Basically, let me think for 1 second. It's okay to lose some awareness while you're working on stuff. Honestly, right now, you don't need to worry about anything except for the fact that you're struggling with implementing specifics and making simple game plans. And any other issues that you're having, like you said, you turn stupid when you try to do a game plan and you're not really like interacting well and stuff, and it's like, yeah, don't worry about that because you're just not good at the game plan stuff yet. And the most important piece of advice I can say to you is stop like spiraling. Like like I can just feel it almost every time you bring something up with like, okay, we're cool, I got what I'm doing, I know what I'm doing, but also I super struggle with like knowing whether it's my turn or their turn, and it's really complicated. It's like, dude, it's not complicated because like you can just make it simple for yourself. Don't try to go beyond every time. Let's just keep it simple, focus on the game plans, focus on implementing. Let's get this cycle kind of figured out, and then we'll figure out what the next step is, okay? Keep it nice and calm and simple. If you feel like you're getting overwhelmed, it's because you're overcomplicating it or you're trying to solve too many problems at once. I need you to hold on to this, because this is like the issue. We've talked about a bunch of different specific things, but this entire time there's been the one issue of like you just
Reaching
like
for the next
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you just start counting super fast with a million things, and it's like, that is the issue. That is your issue. That's one issue that you have to fix, is that you overcomplicate and you keep expanding until you get overwhelmed. So keep it tiny, keep it manageable, and let's work on this loop of improving on little tiny chunks, okay?
Sounds good.
All right. Great lesson, man. I hope you have a good one. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. Take it easy.
Peace.